So this was a requested video from you guys. Today we're talking about what to sell in the pre-loved market and where to sell it. We're going to go through some of the more popular resellers. These were some that you guys asked of me over on my Instagram, and I'm going to tell you kind of like what their market is and kind of like what they tend to go for, what does well, what they'll accept, and some things that they won't. With that, if you're new here, my name is Catherine, and I worked in the luxury pre-loved industry for close to 10 years. Here on my YouTube channel, I give you guys insights and perspectives into like what it was like working in it on the ground. Definitely some shopping tips, some tips on authentication, and just how you know you're making a good buy. If you have any questions or if you have any types of videos that you like to see, this was a suggestion from one of you guys, and I love getting those. So comment if you have any questions about the resale industry down below. So I'm gonna get started with the types of things that in my opinion, are the most difficult to sell, and that is vintage. Vintage is difficult for a number of reasons. First and foremost, the level of popularity for something that may have only existed like, I don't know, 40 or 50 years ago is not incredibly high. So you are expecting that the item may sit for a while, and it just doesn't have the level of ubiquity that a lot of other things have. A lot of places don't like to take vintage because, number one, older things are more likely to have wear and scuffs and stains and odors. Odors are a huge one, so the condition isn't always necessarily going to be there. That's going to lower the price point. And of course, with all of that condition, it's a lot more difficult to disclose any of that. So there is a higher susceptibility for chargebacks. There's a higher susceptibility for it being less desirable because of any types of condition notes. So if you do have vintage to sell, I would recommend selling yourself on eBay. I would recommend places like Poshmark, and even potentially like some of the like smaller local businesses if you have any of those available. I would say with vintage, Louis Vuitton is definitely the best seller, especially if it is monogram. Remember that the prices are not going to go for very, very high. There's a lot of it out there on the market, and it's not necessarily hard to come by, but there is a market for it. People do like it, and there is some movement, people buying and selling. I would not necessarily recommend places like Fashionfile and Rebag. Fashionfile and Rebag tend to go for more of the ultra luxury, top tier, giftable, so you know, brand new from the store, current season, like bags that you will see on store shelves currently. Now they do make some exceptions. I have seen like some vintage bags on Fashionfile. Every once in a while I'll catch an odd like St. Cloud or something like that, but generally speaking, that's not the best place that you're going to find them. I do want to add in here that Fashionfile does have a vintage section as a part once you go to the bags area of their menu, and there are a selection of vintage bags here. There's a lot of Louis Vuitton, you can see some Dior, and there's also a collection of Chanel, Hermes, and Rolex watches. But what I do want you to notice is that the lowest end of vintage bags is typically about $625. I think that Fashionfile generally wants to stay in the realm of what they can sell for around $1,000 or more. You can see some of these Rolexes are $6,000 and $7,000, but generally speaking, with vintage, the prices are not going to be able to garner this much money. So they are much more selective with their available inventory as opposed to what you may find on other markets. There's also a certain condition level that they prefer here at Fashionfile, and that gets harder and harder to do as we go on with age. We are going to be talking about Fashionfile more in depth in a second, but I did want to show you that there is vintage available here, but it may not be the best or most available option. I think that local resellers, trying it out on eBay or places like Poshmark on your own, you get more of the money, but it does require more work. Now, the reason why it is more risky, so buyouts are less likely, is because of all of the condition notes and the just the level of risk there is in taking an item as inventory. I love vintage. I find it more unique, but the fact is that it just really isn't the same level you would get for newer things that are in better condition, more popular, more current. Also with vintage and eBay, I think that generally speaking, there's a lot more of an understanding that your item is going to be more final sale. People buying it may not necessarily be expecting absolute perfection in condition, and it's like less likely to have chargebacks so long as you disclose absolutely everything that could possibly be seen as a flaw with it. Now, I mostly stick to higher luxury brands, but if you have things like in the more contemporary route, I would say that there is a little bit of potential in bringing your items somewhere like the Real. But generally speaking, I would say that you'll be somewhere like ThreadUp. Again, local places are great for stuff like this, especially if you live in like not like a hyper metropolitan area. Here in Miami, unfortunately, there isn't a huge market for like the mid-tier brands, so that's just not really something that I have a lot of expertise in. Once you get outside of like major metropolitan areas and there is like sort of like a variance, I guess, in the resale that's available, then you'll be able to see, you'll be able to have like more avenues in local for local businesses to sell your things. Again, don't expect a whole bunch of money, especially if these are brands that like go on sale, such as like Coach, Dooney, Michael Kors, Marc Jacobs, the type of things that are sold at like places like Shopbop, for example. Yeah, the resale on them is not high just because the price points on them are not necessarily very high. So again, we do this for fun. We're just trying to recoup some of that money to maybe recirculate it back into our pockets or maybe back onto our bag shelves. Like my Demelier, my Brandon Blackwood, I sent to the Real. That is basically where I would recommend bringing your like mid-range, mid-tier items. Next up, I want to talk about the Real. Listen, I love the Real. I shop there all the time. They were a line item, I would say, in my budget for, I don't even want to know, like I counted a couple years ago and I had over 50 orders from them. I don't even want to look and see what that number is today. But there are certain things that I will sell with them and certain things that I won't. So the reason why I'm more particular with the Real than I am with some of the others is because I think that the Real is very large of a company. So they take clothing, shoes, accessories, bags, obviously. They do vintage, they do contemporary, they do high, they do low-ish. They're a large company. They have probably thousands of new pieces coming in daily. You don't really necessarily get the same level of like agency and decision making, especially when it comes to pricing and things like that, when you send your items to them. They simply don't have the time to correspond with every single one of their sellers. Now, in my opinion, that might mean that they are a little bit too big, just saying. But that is the decision they've decided to make for the business, and I think that that is kind of to the detriment of some of the consigners. So what I send to the Real is clothing, shoes, just anything that is like a, you know, higher level designer brand that I'm not wearing and not using. Not something that I'm really particular about pricing on. So I kind of see the Real as like a step above ThreadUp when it comes to like selling of clothing and shoes. Are pretty liberal with what the types of things that they accept and in the condition that they accept. A lot of the times when I buy something from there, I'll end up sending it back to them, especially if it doesn't fit or I bought it like on final sale or something like that. I've bought 4 bags from the Real. I will say that there are 2 bags that I bought that were vintage. If you're looking to buy vintage is going to be more expensive on the Real than it may be somewhere like eBay, but it's more likely to be in like a little in like better condition than you'll find out there on like the whole eBay marketplace. So yeah, it might be a little bit more curated, less wear. So if you have things like that and you want to get a little bit higher, maybe you can send your vintage items there. However, do know that you may not have like final veto power on the price, and your item may get sold before you've even like gotten the email that it's like been accepted or whatever. So that is something I do caution. Based on you know, that policy, I'm a lot more choosy with what I send to them. The other thing too to take into account that the Real is all consignment. With some of the others, you're looking at direct buyouts. So basically, like once the money changes hands, the item is no longer like owned by you, and that definitely is a factor in how some of the other companies like proceed and move forward with their merchandise, because they do own it. The Real does not own the merchandise, and they don't pay you for it until after the item sells. And considering the size of the company, that's just generally something I'm not really like all too comfortable with when I'm considering selling like bigger ticket items. So when we're talking about online resellers, my favorite personally is Fashionfile. Fashionfile is great because the selling process is easy. You submit your quotes online. You get quotes via email, like through your like online portal within a couple of days of you submitting your item for sale. It's pretty easy, pretty straightforward. They pay for it outright once they receive the item and have inspected it and everything. Like in my experience, it's been like a day after it arrives, I receive the payment, which is great. There's the option to take it into your local Neiman Marcus if you have one available, if you have one nearby. The only drawback with them is that because they like to focus on the like highest tiers possible, basically, they're really selective in what they take. So as someone who doesn't like to shop, you know, mainstream and buy things that like everyone else is buying at the same time, that does kind of take pieces of my collection out of the running to be able to shop with them. I don't really recommend them for vintage. Their main focus is the ultra top tier high level luxury, and that's where they like to stay. So if you have like, I don't know, like recently I submitted a Givenchy bag that I bought from them a couple of years back to sell with them, and they didn't accept it just simply because they buy things outright. They do need better turnaround time, and Givenchy isn't particularly popular right now. So depending on what type of items you have, I would say that they probably give among like the better quotes for like super popular hot items, especially Chanel and Hermes, and they will pay you, and they do pay upfront for it. They do also offer consignment as an option for certain things. That's not something I've ever dealt with. But once you get to like the Louis Vuitton tier, especially if it's not like a bag or an item that is like highly coveted and sought after, how do I say, like that isn't as much of a priority for them. You're not going to get like huge, great, fabulous quotes all the time. Yeah, I do like them because they're convenient, but you're kind of only able to play there at a certain level. Submitted my Louis Vuitton limited edition Speedy just to see what they would say, and they offered me like $425, and I definitely did not want to sell it for that price, but I understand why they did it. Like every business has its niche, every business has its target audience and its priorities. They're not necessarily going to put like a high price tag on something that isn't highly popular and that they expect is going to sit for a long time. Pretty much one problem that I personally have with the industry is that there really isn't like a mid-tier of people with a budget of like $2,000. Like someone who wants to spend like anywhere from $1,200 to $2,000, there aren't really great options for someone with that budget currently to shop on the pre-love market. Certainly not on the brand new market in 2024 and beyond. And now a lot of you have asked me about Rebag, and I have seen some of the issues that they have been having recently from a couple of people who have like posted about them. I haven't sold with them before. I don't have any firsthand experience or knowledge. I do caution everyone, including people that want to like maybe get into this industry, that there is a lot of meticulous detail that goes into doing this as a business. In order to do this well, like you can't be sloppy. Mistakes will be made even when you're doing your best. If you don't have systems in place to make sure that like the right information stays together with the item, that is a recipe for disaster. So I've heard and I've seen a lot of what people are saying about them now. It's hard to do this at scale, and I think that the business that does it at scale the best is Fashionfile, but they're much more limited in what they accept and what they take in, and that is a decision that they made in order for them to maintain their level of organization and reputability. And yes, of course, we also love to support small businesses and smaller resellers. I can't necessarily I can't go into detail necessarily about like every single individual one, but there are plenty of great ones out there. If you have any questions of any that I've heard of, then please leave me a comment down below. I'm happy to answer questions from a lot of the ones you see out there on like the social media and the resale market, etc. So yes, I hope that was helpful to you guys. I did the buying version of this video a while back, and I'll be sure to leave that one linked down below. If you have any more questions of videos any more questions or suggestions of videos that you'd like to see, then be sure to comment them down below. But just in case, be sure to hit the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up. It really helps out my channel a lot. And I will see you guys in my next one. Bye!